Good evening, everybody. Thank you so much for joining me tonight on YouTube Live. I'm Dr. Howard Elkin, the medical advocate, and I'm pleased to talk about a different topic, fasting. Now, we've talked about the last few weeks, we talked about diet, nutrition quite a bit here on YouTube Live. And we mentioned that there's really not one diet that's ideal for all. It really is, it varies. There's so many different variables. And then we talked about the Mediterranean diet and we talked about the paleo diet. Then last session, we segued over to vegetarian, or more specifically the vegan diet, and also the ketogenic diet. So today we're going to talk about fasting, its role, and you've heard about it so much of it lately, so I want to kind of clear the air and talk a little bit about it. But first, I really like looking into definitions and word derivation, so I looked it up. So fasting comes from the word fast, which actually in turn has an old English root. And it's F-A-E-S-T-E-N. And the A and the E are somehow almost connected. I don't understand old British roots. But anyway, it's from an old British root, and it means voluntary abstinence from food or drink, usually of a religious order. So I went on a little further and say, okay, so where did this really come about? And being Jewish, I really never studied the New Testament. I'm familiar with the Old Testament, but in the New Testament, if you go to Matthew 6:16, where Jesus is teaching his disciples about godly living, he mentions the fact that, well, when you fast, this is what happens, as opposed to you should fast, or you will fast, or if you fast. So his words imply that fasting was a natural part of godly living and for the disciples. So that was the religious, how this whole thing came about. But we're going to talk about health today. And there's 5 major health benefits that you've heard about or will hear about. And one is everybody's interested in weight loss, right? I mean, that's always a big thing. Another one would be improved blood sugar control. And there's heart health, cancer prevention, and also brain function. Those are really important things. So let's break these down to my favorite ones. Number one is fasting can help with blood sugar control. And this is really important because we've talked in the past about metabolic health. And if you remember, only 12% of the adult American population is what we call metabolically healthy. That means there's a hell of a lot of unhealthy people out there, the gross majority, right? And what that reflects is insulin resistance. As we get older, people become insulin resistant, and they basically get fat. So fasting will help get away from insulin resistance and turn us more into insulin sensitivity, what is what we want. So it actually helps to increase the sensitivity so that insulin, which needs to be recognized by muscle and liver cells for the sugar to be deposited in those cells, that's what happens. So normally with resistance, it's not recognized. So the blood sugar remains high, and then that signals the pancreas to make even more insulin. Then you've got hyperinsulinemia, or insulin going amok, and it's not good for the heart, it's not good for the brain, and it certainly causes weight gain. So you can improve blood sugar control with the use of fasting. Now, it also helps to fight inflammation. And inflammation is the bane of our existence when it comes to aging, because all the diseases of aging, let's see, heart disease, cancer, autoimmune disorders, and Alzheimer's, they all have one thing in common, and that's inflammation. Now, inflammation is normal when we're fighting an infectious disease, a cold or a flu, or something like COVID, but it's not normal when people are walking around 24/7, 365 days of the year with inflammation. So inflammation can be combated by the use of fasting. And how does that happen? It's probably based on blood sugar. Again, sugar itself is extremely, it's inflammatory. I always tell people that ingesting sugar is like pouring gasoline over a fire. So when you have less eating, bouts of eating, you will control your blood sugar, like we mentioned before, and also help to combat inflammation. It's really important. It may also boost brain function and help avert neurodegenerative disorders. Now, they're doing a lot of this with animals. We don't have a lot of human studies yet, but that's pretty exciting that we can improve nerve function. And it makes perfect sense because we know that metabolic syndrome and diabetes there's a higher association with Alzheimer's because the brain itself doesn't do well with a lot of insulin and a lot of glucose. So by shifting it through the use of fasting, you can actually improve brain health. That's what we hope, that's what we think. But again, we need more studies to really prove this point. And it certainly can help with weight loss. Now, this is not going to be a quick fix. It's not a diet per se. It's not about controlling what you eat. It's more about controlling when you eat. And so it does have a role. And the good thing about what I like about fasting versus just caloric restriction is that actually it can help you lose fat and retain muscle. And that's really important because as we get older, what we're really interested in is body composition and not merely just fat loss. So very important. And there's studies that have shown that there's indeed fat loss with muscle preservation with the use of fasting. Fasting can also increase human growth hormone. In fact, when we try to test human growth hormone, we actually have people fasting. That's one of the ways of actually measuring the hormone. And human growth hormone is like the master gland. It's from the master gland, the pituitary. So it helps to control growth, metabolism, and also muscle strength. And the fun thing about fasting, it may also have a major effect on increasing longevity. Now, we have known for years with animals that two things can actually help to improve longevity. One is cold, and the other is caloric restriction. And so fasting is in that category. So we don't really have a lot of data on with humans yet, but those of us do believe that's a role there. It could also aid in cancer prevention and increase responsiveness to chemotherapy. And again, it's the old sugar. It always boils down to sugar because we know that cancer thrives in the presence of sugar. So if you're fasting and having less constant nibbling on sugar, it can certainly be helpful in cancer prevention. And the other one that I think is very important is gut health. Now, I'm a cardiologist, but I'm as interested in gut now as I've always been in the heart because the gut is now thought to be the second brain. And if your gut's not healthy, you're not healthy. And so when you're constantly eating, so many meals per day, you're constantly you're causing havoc with the gut hormones, and also it's just not healthy for the gut. And the gut needs to heal. So when you have a window of not eating, it actually is very helpful for the gut. So what about contraindications? When do we not fast? Well, obviously, if you're pregnant or lactating, nursing women that's not the time to be fasting. Also, if you're underweight, I would not suggest to do fasting. And if it's an eating disorder, I certainly wouldn't do fasting. There's a couple of medical conditions that I'm really careful about. One is kidney stones, because kidney stones really depends on the deposition of calcium oxalate stones. And there's such a vacillation. We're not quite sure what precipitates what. So if it's been several years and the person's pretty stable, then you might want to consider it. But usually people that have had recurrent kidney stones, I would stay away from fasting. And also GI reflux, same kind of thing, unless it's become stable. And you can stabilize GI reflux with supplements and with lifestyle, as opposed to those drugs, which I won't mention. So there are other ways of handling GI reflux. Once it's under control, you may be able to partake in some fasting. Heart failure patients. Okay. Now, my patients in severe heart failure, I'm not going to tell them to fast. It'd be the worst thing in the world, especially if they're taking diuretics. Already with diuretics, I have to be concerned about electrolyte abnormalities. So obviously, if they're taking diuretics or have congestive heart failure, fasting is not for you. Also, advanced kidney or liver disease. Again, these are metabolic issues that have to be controlled. And if they're unstable at all, we would not want to subject a person to fasting because we just don't know what the outcome would be. Why take the chance? And also uncontrolled hyperthyroidism, meaning an hyperactive thyroid. These people need calories until the thyroid's under control, and you wouldn't want to mess with that. Again, it's a hormonal issue. Now, what about fasting approaches? There's a few of them out there. The basic one is intermittent fasting. And that's the soundbite, the buzzword you've all been hearing about. So that means you pick a window and you don't eat from your last bite from this meal to your first bite of the next meal. And usually it's at least 12 hours. We try to shoot for what's called 16-8, meaning you fast for 16 hours and you eat during a period of 8 hours. Now, that's probably the most common common type of fasting is intermittent fasting. And I've been doing it now for over 3 years. And I'll talk about my results later, but it's Not that difficult to do, and I've been doing that, but something even a little more restrictive. It is called time restrictive eating. It's the same thing. It's intermittent fasting, but you do all your eating within the window of when it's light outside, which can be real difficult in the wintertime when we have shorter days, right? So, but the reason why time restrictive eating may be even better is that you're really going along your body's natural circadian rhythm. And also it actually helps with sleep and awake cycles. And also a lot of the gut hormones, things like ghrelin and leptin, you want to have balance of those gut hormones. Actually, leptin is made in your fat cells, but ghrelin is made in the stomach. But balance takes place by eating at more restricted periods of time. So time restricted eating is a little more specific way of doing intermittent fasting. Then there's another one that's really good, and that's the 5-2 program. Now, this really is gained. I learned about it through a friend of mine who's British, and it's really it was pioneered by in the UK. So this program, you take 2 weeks. You take 2 days, non-consecutive days, and you eat restricted calories. If you're a woman, you get up to 500 calories that day. If you're a man, 600 calories. You pick 2 non-consecutive days in a 7-day period, and you eat regularly those other days. And it's been shown to be really, really effective. It hasn't really taken off in this country. I've tried to put a few people on it, and it just seems to be, I didn't have really great success with it, but it looks really good to me. And I know in England it has been more popular. There's also alternate day fasting, in which you can fast one day and you don't fast the next. So it'd be 3 days one day and 4 days the next week you'd be fasting. Now, that's also taking a little bit of a twist, because you can have up to a very small 500 calorie meal on that day in which you're actually fasting, but that's alternate day fasting. And then this guy, Mike Mutzel, I'm going to refer you to him later, Mutzel, he does great podcasts. He made this thing up called Metabolic Monday. So he has his last meal on Sunday and doesn't Sunday evening, and then he fasts until Monday evening. So it's a 24-hour fast, but I think he chooses Sundays, kind of like sets him for the week. I don't think there's any scientific data behind that particular program, but it seems to work for him. And the other one is that I am very familiar with. It's called FMD, Fasting Mimicking Diet. And this was pioneered by an Italian researcher, Dr. Walter Longo. He was originally from Genoa, Italy, and was brought to USC several years ago and to head the longevity program there. And this actually, I was very interested when I heard about this. I heard him speak at the American Academy of Anti-Aging Medicine meeting over 3 years ago. And I was really interested in the fact that it really does show some advantage in longevity. That's really what I was interested in. And I took a few months to study it, and then I've been doing it since about 3 years this month. So what happens for 3 consecutive months, well, I should say 5 consecutive days in 3 consecutive months, you have a very limited amount of calories. So the first day you have like almost 1,200 calories. On the days 2 through 5, you have 700 calories. That's it. And you do that for 3 consecutive months. So basically you're talking 15 days out of 90, which is pretty doable. And the benefits, which I'll talk about later, are pretty cool. So that's another very popular eating plan. Okay, so how do I do it? And first, before I even talk about myself, it's really fasting something that it's a very individual thing. I would say if you're doing fine on whatever program you're doing now, there's no need to think about fasting. Fasting is if you want to enhance your heart health, your weight loss, or the things that we mentioned before, but it's not for everybody, and it really depends on what you're looking for. I have this little saying. Well, it's not my saying, but if it ain't broke, don't fix it. So fasting doesn't have to be that you need to do. My experience has been very good. I started intermittent fasting over 3 years ago, and I've been doing FMD. I'm getting ready to do my, I think, 14th cycle in another week or two. So what it did for me, and by the way, these are not quick fix things. I didn't do it for weight loss, although I did trim down a little bit. I did it for the longevity. But the offshoots of what I've learned from doing the combination of intermittent fasting and fasting mimicking diet is that I snack less. I don't snack at all in the evening anymore. I'll have my dinner, and then I'll have like a fruit afterwards, and that's it. I don't have the desire to snack at night. And I used to do it before. I was put more of an emotional way of eating, but it doesn't even cross my mind usually. And if it does, I still don't do it. And I don't snack during the day. And I've also noticed that my portion sizes tend to be smaller than they used to be, which is very interesting. And also a very interesting offshoot for me is that I have taught my body to be fat adaptive. And I know that because I measure my ketones through this device called Biosense. It measures the acetone in your breath. And when I do FMD, my ketones go through the roof. And not just on day 4 and 5. At the very beginning, I've taught my body to subsist on fat. And even when I stop the diet, when I go back to my regular eating patterns, I'm fat adaptive for many, many weeks. This is a process of doing this several times. So I've actually taught my body to be fat adaptive when I know I was very carb sensitive beforehand. Again, if you want to let me learn about this, Mike Mutzel, M-U-T-Z-E-L, he has a great podcast on this recently on 428. It's called High Intensity Health. He does some really cool things. And this podcast a couple weeks ago on 428 was based on intermittent fasting. So it's a good thing. That's how I do it. But the most important thing is you need to do what's right for you. And you need to always speak to your doctor, your medical professional, or something like this. I've talked about some of the contraindications. There are people that need to be careful. But again, there's no substitute for speaking to your medical professional. So now we're going to open up for questions because I hope you have some. So let me get my glasses on so I can read these. Okay, what happens to your blood sugar levels during fasting? Do they drop way down? Could that lead to hypo? They will initially, okay? And also when you're starting on fasting, you have to be prepared for being a little groggy, being, irritable, being, headachy. That could reflect a low blood sugar. But in my experience and experience of those that have done this repetitively, you get over that relatively quickly. So yes, you have to expect that at the very beginning. But things like food cravings, low blood sugar, headache, irritability go away relatively quickly with experience. So yes, you do have to expect that at the beginning. And the solution, I had one patient that was trying FMD and she had headaches. What did she do? She jumped and had a glass of orange juice. Totally screwed up the entire plan. So you have to work around, you have to expect it. That's why you're not going to do it on people that are out of control diabetics. But it is, you have to expect some of these not so pleasant side effects at the very beginning. I was very lucky and I didn't experience too many of them, but some do. So yeah, you have to be on the lookout for that. Good question. Okay, intermittent fasting versus time restricted. Okay, time restricted, that's what I'm aiming for, okay? The reason I personally can't get to it is because I work too late. I mean, I'm still here, right? I mean, it's still light, but, and during the wintertime, forget it. I can't do it. So, but I do think that it's more physiologic. It's just better overall because you're working with your circadian clock. You're supposed to eat when we're awake, not when it's dark. It also, again, helps with the gut hormone balance, which is very important. And so that's what I think is best for the patients. I don't think average person can do that, if they can, it really depends on their work schedule. But that would be, I think, the most healthy way of going about it. I really do think so. Is it a concern if you don't have a gallbladder? I don't think so, because we're not talking about fat. We're not talking about what you eat. Again, we're talking about when you eat. So I don't think, a lot of people think about, I don't have a gallbladder anymore. It means I can't have fat, or I can't do this, or I can't do that. You can, if you don't have a gallbladder and you find that you are sensitive to fatty foods, I recommend working with a nutritionist, someone who really knows nutrition. But I don't think it's a contraindication. I think you can get over it. But again, with the fasting we're talking about when you eat as opposed to what you eat. I don't think it's going to really matter. I really don't. Okay. What foods do you like to eat coming off of a fast? Okay. Now, that's a great question too. FMD, the Prolong, the people that put it out, it's called Prolong, that's the name of the company, Prolon. They have a nice, cute little kit. It's a big box with 5 boxes in it. And so you eat day 1, day 2, day 3, day 4, day 5. And it's very organized, very clean. And it takes all the thinking out. I like that. I don't have to think about when I'm fasting. I just eat what's in that box for that day. So they definitely what you want to do is to avoid any kind of fried foods. I would probably avoid alcohol. I would, I would watch the really a lot of carbs, because remember, it's a very restricted diet. You're eating very limited calories for 5 days. And by the way, it doesn't matter whether you're my size or someone who's petite or someone who's heavier. We all eat the same. It's 1,200 calories on day 1 and then 750 on days 2 through 5. But any kind of fasting, I don't worry about coming off of it. I just try to watch the carbs, try to watch the sugar, and try anything that's fried. Now, they mentioned, the proline people say, oh, well, when you come off the diet, you should be eating soups. It's like, sorry, I ate soup for 5 days on this program. The last thing I want to do on day 6 is eat more soup. So I don't really abide by their recommendations, but there are recommendations for FMD. And I don't think it would hold true for any kind of diet. So I think common sense goes a long way. Again, it's not that you're going to blow it on day 6 or whenever you want to go off your fast. It's one lady I was following on Facebook. There's a support group, people on FMD, and I'm pretty experienced. She's saying, oh my God, I really blew it. I did my first cycle, I did 5 days. I did by the book. Everything was perfect. On day 6, I blew it. I ate everything in sight. So I wrote her back and I said, give yourself a pat on the back here. If you follow this diet to a T for 5 days, you did something really great. As far as what to eat on day 6, give yourself a break. I've done so many of these cycles that I'm intuitive eater now. So I don't have to think about what am I going to eat when I get off my fast. So this is going to take patience. It's not an overnight success. And that's the important thing I want to really bring home. Okay, what's the easiest way to start? Great question. Since so much people are used to eating all the time. When I was competing in bodybuilding, we were told to eat like 6 and 8 meals a day when we were getting close to competition, so we could cut up and get really cut. And that was based on like no science. But you got to remember, bodybuilders we were our own guinea pigs. Nutrition was like in its infancy. Nobody knew much about sports nutrition. So we just figured, the more I eat, the more calories I burn, right? But it played havoc on our insulin levels and also play on our sleep and other things. So it was actually a stressful thing we didn't know about. Now we know better. So the important thing is if people have health issues and they're eating a lot, I say, okay, let's get rid of the snacking. Let's just do 3 square meals. Breakfast, lunch, dinner, or whatever you want to call it, 3 meals a day. And I get them to do that first for at least a few weeks. Once they're doing that and they've cut out snacking in general, then I can say, okay, let's pick a window. Let's pick a window that you can adhere to. And I say, start off with 12. Don't go past 12 hours. If you can go 15, don't. Start off with 12. And then increase over a period of time. So I average 14, 15 hours during most days during the week. On the weekends, I easily go to 16 hours. I can go 17 hours, but there's no scientific reason to go beyond 16 hours. So again, it's gradual. Get rid of the snacking first, then pick a window. And it really will come to you. You have to just trust me on this. Can you take supplements, amino acids? Okay. I think taking supplements is a great idea, especially amino acids, because you want to keep the protein intake high, and again, you want to preserve muscle mass. I would not take anything that's going to lower your blood sugar levels at all, because it's going to be low anyway. So let's say you take metformin for diabetes or metabolic syndrome, and some of us take it just because it's the longevity. It's one of those in vogue longevity things. Or if you take things like alpha-lipoic acid or berberine. These are herbs that really help with blood sugar management. I would not take them during your actual fast, okay, because you can get too much of a blood sugar drop, which is really important. But amino acids, absolutely. I would take amino acids for sure. And the big thing, which I didn't mention, is drink. You have to be hydrated. You have to stay hydrated when you're doing any kind of fasting. And also, you can probably most likely liberalize your salt intake. Okay, I know we've been saying for years, low salt, low sodium. Again, that was based on, I don't know who. Most of us in the functional medicine field, even in cardiology, do not feel that that's such an important thing unless you're truly a salt retainer. And there's no test for that. But, after a while, you get to know, if you are, if you're not. So salt's very important, as is fluid, hydration. Okay. Should you drink water when fasting? Oh, yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. We talked about that one. Okay. What are your thoughts on probiotics, fibers, glutamine, et cetera, while fasting? You got to remember, just fasting in itself is going to improve your gut function. because you're eating less. You're giving your gut a window to actually recover, right? Eating is a stress on your gut. Your gut has to work hard. Probiotics, I don't stop my probiotics. Let me look at the and my fiber might go down, but I think fiber. I mean, I am into fiber. Glutamine is your non-essential essential amino acid, as far as I'm concerned. Meaning, your body does make it, but doesn't make enough of it if you're a physically active person. So, yes, Trevor Love, all those things are good. During fasting. Absolutely. How do you feel about the extended fast, 7 days? Good question. I purposely didn't get in. I wasn't going to get involved, but then you asked. I think it's a matter of personal choice. Whatever works for you. If you do well with a 7-day fast, do it. A juice fast, do it. I don't see the science behind it. And truthfully, I don't really want to deprive myself anymore. Like I said, on day 6, when I finish my FMD, the last thing I want is more soup. So I have never felt the need to do extended fasting. I am Jewish, so I do fast on Yom Kippur every year, but it's more of a spiritual thing. And it's never bothered me. I've been doing it since I was 13. So I don't think there's much science behind prolonged fasting. But again, if your body adapts to it well and you feel good spiritually, emotionally with it, it's your call. Absolutely. Okay, let me see. What about how to fit in exercise? Good question. Okay, when you're starting off with fasting, be really careful with the exercise. Like when I was starting off with the FMD, they say don't exercise that week. Well, it's kind of hard for me not to do. What I do when I'm doing the FMD, I do my strength training, and I go as far out as I can, and I'm pretty good at it. What I don't do during the days I do that FMD, that long cycle, I don't do any aerobic activity. So I do cut back. So again, that's an individual thing. You'll probably improve your threshold for exercise as you get more advanced in it. At the very beginning of any fasting, I would be very conservative, minimize your exercise until you one step at a time. I believe in baby steps. So that's really a good, important question. How does it heal the gut? Just by rest. I think it's by rest. And also like leaky gut. And there's so many gut disorders. I have a nutritionist that works in my office, and I screen all my patients for inflammation. To me, it's so important. And if I have a patient that's got inflammatory markers, and I don't just mean the first time I see them, I mean repetitively. Like I have a 22-year-old college student today that she's always got a very high level. I said, you know what, we got to look at your gut, because we have to look at two things: your oral cavity and your gut. And guess what? They're all connected, right? So I look at the oral cavity and the gut, but we're talking about the gut here. And yeah, I think it is. That's why I think that fasting can be very healthy. But like you say, it's mostly just for giving the gut a rest. Okay, let's see. These are great questions tonight. Okay, can you address autophagy? Whoa, the role of mechanism. Okay. That's one of the, well, I didn't get into it, but that's one of the interests that's what sparked my interest at the very beginning when I started, when I thought about doing FMD and intermittent fasting. So autophagy, for those of you who are not familiar with the term, auto means self, and phagy means eating. So basically, it's kind of self-cannibalization. Not really, but what happens is that, and that's the beauty of FMD, and thank you for reminding me that. So what happens, this is really what turned me on, when you fast or mimic fasting during those 5 days, you stimulating cellular debris, your body to get rid of it. So our body is not stagnant. We're building new and we're getting rid of the old, building the new, getting rid of the old. And that's how we continue to survive into old age. What happens, so the fasting really accentuates the breaking down the old, or the autophagy. But with the magic comes on day 6 and thereafter, because once you've broken down the cycle and got rid of cellular debris that needs to be gotten rid of, and including, like, it could be cancer cells, it could be all kinds of cells. And then the interesting thing from there is that then stem cells on day 6 and 7 become stimulated. So your bone marrow will release stem cells. And so you've got the best of repair and of growth and repair. And I tell you, I had a stem cell procedure on my left shoulder, my left shoulder a few years ago, and I purposely planned an FMD cycle right around it. And there was a second time on that particular shoulder, and I recovered so much faster. I mean, I can't prove it was that, but I do believe that combining the FMD with that really made a difference. So autophagy is breaking down, or getting rid of stuff that you don't need anymore. Okay, let me see what else here. How to fit in exercise. Here's where to start. I think we did. Let's see. This is really good. Just excuse me, guys, just to make sure I didn't miss any things. Let me see. And I have a few things in myself. So again, fat adaptation, square. So again, when you start off, be aware of the pitfalls. I mean, you may feel headachy, you may feel fatigued, you might be cranky, you may be a little constipated. You may overeat the day after your fast, but that doesn't mean you blew it. It just means your body has to learn how to do this. It's learning a new skill. Okay, think of it as a skill, and also be aware if you take medications with meals. You don't want to do that. It depends on what medicines you're taking. If something you need to be taken ongoingly, again, fasting may not be for you. And also, we don't have much on the elderly. I personally think that if it's a healthy elderly person, I don't know how you define elderly anymore, but it's probably okay. But again, there's no substitute for getting approval from your doctor. And a lot of doctors are not familiar with this. You probably need to find a functional medicine doctor who is familiar with nutrition, is familiar with fasting, is familiar with supplements, because I'm against someone just saying, no, I'm against it because there's no research. There's no double-blind, placebo-controlled study. Well, there's not going to be one, probably, because there's no money in fasting. There's money in drugs. So as long as there's no money in fasting, you're going to get these observational studies that I find very useful, but you don't have that gold standard, and we have to keep that in mind. Same thing with various supplements and hormones. So anyway, good. Let's see. And I'm going to end in the back, but this is really, unless there's something else. I think everybody did a great job. Now, next time, I want you to know that this is Women's Health Month. May is Women's Health Month, and June is Men's Health Month. And I think the next time, which we'll meet in 2 weeks, will be Women's Health Month. But if I may put Joanne Lee on the spot from the Shrink Shop, if you could put in Joanne, because we're doing a program together this Saturday. I didn't get a chance to talk to you. Maybe you can put in how people can sign up for that, because it's going to be fun. Joanne is an incredible trainer, motivator, nutritionist. And does a lot of online training. She comes from a body background and an athletic background, but we're doing a program together. So, Joanne, if you're still here, let's see. Okay, she's coming. Joanne is one of my favorite people, and we always have great conversations. But this is going to be kind of people can join in and ask questions, and I don't know, the format will be a little different. I think it's going to be more of a Zoom thing than like a chat box, but she's going to run it. I'll be like her kind of a co-host thing, but it's going to be fun because it'll be related to women's health and hormones and nutrition and aging in general. So, okay, so there it is, guys. Look at the bottom of your screen there. You go to the okay, good. IG at the Shrink Shop, link in bio. Good. So Instagram. Okay, yeah, those are on Instagram. Look Joanne up, the Shrink Shop, and in her bio there is a link. So it's going to be a good program. And I'll also be talking about some of the same things, maybe something different in 2 weeks when I see you. So thank you, guys. This is a great time. I really enjoyed it. It's one of my favorite topics to talk about. Remember, doesn't mean that fasting is for everybody. It works for you, it may work for you, it may not work for somebody else. So I'm all into liberalizing that and finding out what works for you. So until we meet again, thank you, everybody, and we'll see you in 2 weeks. Thank you. Have a great night.